I'd like you to gather up your colourful scraps today because we're going to do something quite different. I'm going to show you how to make pinwheel blocks like these. They're very easy to do. And then I'm going to show you about using other scraps to make your first border. And then we're going to cut out music notes and we're going to make a lullaby cot quilt, a pinwheel lullaby cot quilt. For the pinwheels and the first border, you will need 8 different coloured fat quarters. From those fat quarters, you will cut 1 and sometimes 2, depending on what colours you want to mix up, 5-inch squares of the colours, and the sashing and the backing fabric you will need equal of that as well. So I've got a coloured 5-inch square and a backing fabric 5-inch square. I'm going to take the backing one, which is the pale fabric. It's got little music notes on, very, very pale. Right sides together, just even it up. And I'm going to stitch using a 1/4-inch seam allowance all the way around the 4 raw edges. When I've done that, here it is. I've stitched around 1/4 inch all the way around, and I've also marked from corner to corner cut lines to make 4 different sections. So I'll cut that now. I've drawn the pencil line. It's sometimes easier to cut if you can see a definite line. So I've cut along that way, and now I won't move it. Cut along that way. So that now makes 4 sections. You can see that? So to make our pinwheel block, we need to bring the section out, iron it, press it, but press your seams to the darker side, because if you've got a pale background you don't want the shadow of that showing. So we'll just press those out. There's 4 of those. That's the wrong way. Just press it out. I've thumb pressing this, but you can obviously do it with a nice iron. Just thumb press that like that. So you can see you've got that was your coloured square and that was your background square, and you've now got 4 separate pinwheel pieces. So when they are put together, I'll use different colours here because I've got some cut in different colours. You'll put 4 of those. Now these are not what I've actually going to use for my square. They're just showing you the different colour. I'm going to sew up some probably different colours. I'll use a yellow one just there. So you can see that the 4 units together will make 1 pinwheel block. So you will stitch this one at the bottom, the top 2 here, you'll stitch a 1/4 inch seam along there. You'll flip that one over and line them up, get your diagonal seams right, and stitch a 1/4 inch seam down there again. And when they are laid out together, you will then take these 2 at the top, flip them over, line them up along there, get them nice and sharp in the middle, and stitch across that. Press it all out, trim it off, trim off your edge pieces. I actually trim these off. If I can find some scissors here, I actually trim these off, these little pieces. I just snip those off to make it square before I start, and that's easier then to join your seams together. So that's what I'll do. I'll make up I need 12 blocks. Use whatever colours you like, but I've got a multitude of colours here, so I'm just going to use random colours. So you need 12 of these blocks sewn up. I've stitched all of my pinwheels together and I've cut them back to a 5-inch square. I'll show you how you can use your 6.5-inch ruler and get a perfect 5-inch square from that. You will have, this one is uncut, and you'll see that as it can be quite irregular around the outside, but that doesn't matter because you're going to lose almost quarter, half an inch off each side. So I'll show you how you can cut that out. This is your square before it's cut back, and it will, as I said, it will be a little bit irregular around the outside. Should meet quite well in the middle, but don't worry if it's not exact. Your 6.5-inch ruler, you're going to count 2.5 in to the center point. Now, I don't know if you can see that, but that is the center. You're going to line up the dotted line on my ruler here. Going to line it up so that you know you are squaring up. Now, if you look very closely, you'll see that this diagonal line is a little bit off, but that's because my point hasn't quite met at the center, but that's okay, you won't notice it in your finished quilt. So I'm going to cut now. It's 2.5 inches, 2.5 inches there to the center, 2.5 inches there to the center. So I'm just going to cut, and be careful because you've got quite a seam in the middle there. 2.5 again. I'll turn it round, put my ruler on again. You can see now you've got your smaller square here. Take it up to 2.5, line it up again with your seam lines, the horizontal one and the vertical one, and then you've got your diagonal there, and that will be that will be now on your board here. That is 5 inches, 5 inches square. Try and mix your colours up. Now this pattern does come out of 8 fat quarters, but I've used a lot of scrap. So some of your blocks you'll use 1 square, 5-inch square with the background fabric on the back. You might use 2, so you might have more of one colour than the other, but if you've got scrap it's fine to use it for any block, but try and keep your colours just a little bit apart. Now I've got a red and a red, but we're going to put a piece of sashing in there so they won't be next to each other. Now I've got some 2.5-inch strips. The pattern does tell you exactly how many you need to cut. I've taken one of those 2.5-inch strips and I've cross-cut it into 5-inch lengths. Now they're going to be the vertical pieces that go in between the 3 blocks on your first row and then your second row. You'll need 8 of those because you've got 4 rows. So to make your first row, this is your center panel. First row, you'll need 1 piece in between each of your 3 blocks. So I will pin that, put right sides together. I will pin that and stitch along there, and then I will press it out and stitch this one onto there, and so on all the way along, and you can do that on all 4 rows. But as I said, you can use any scrap fabrics if you don't want to use 2 of the same colour. I've got all my pinwheels now stitched together with the vertical sashing. To do the horizontal, I will need 3 pieces, so I'm going to measure across from here to there. It's 18 inches for me, so I'll cut 3 pieces, 3 strips off one of my 2.5-inch background fabrics, and I will attach that to my rows. Now I have marked my rows. I advise you to mark your rows because you can get them really muddled up and ruin the effect altogether. You'll get lots of colours in one heap if you're not careful. So with using the same method that we used to do the vertical sashing, we do the horizontal. And make sure that you don't you cut them all the same width. If you're a little bit out on one row, just get the same one, get the average measurement, because you need to keep it square. This middle panel has to be kept nice and squared. With my horizontal rows nicely sewn on now, and I've given them a little bit of press, I've got up this way round on the board because my board is longer this way. So now I need to put the side sashing on here, which is like a white border now. So I'm going to measure through my quilt 3 times across there, cut that exact measurement, and sew one piece on the right hand side and the other piece on the left. Then I'll come back and repeat just like I did for the horizontal sashing, measure across the bottom and the top and cut 2 pieces of the background fabric of the 2.5 inch strips for the top and the bottom, pin and sew them on. I've got the whole of the background border on now, and I've squared it up. The next step is to make up another border using these strips of the colours. Now you can use any colours, and you really can use them any size, but just use what you've got. So I'm going to join them end to end all the way round, and then I will cut the side pieces first and then the top and the bottom second to fit, just like we did this border, but except for the next border I'm just joining the colours up, and that gives it a really nice focus before you start putting the outer border on. So take your scraps. These, I think these are around 7.5 inches, these pieces, so they will go nicely around the edge. I'll add them on the sides first and then on the top and the bottom. Use whatever colours you like. Just pick some colours out of your pinwheels and it will really look nice. When we put 4 7.5 inch pieces together, it just fits the side, the long side of our quilt. So 4 pieces there. Now do them randomly, and this, I've stitched this on to show you. Now this will go on the other side like so. That will go on there, and then I will measure across there, but I've joined my end pieces together for the top and the bottom. I've joined them end to end, but they will be slightly longer, so I'll center it and just trim off at the end the excess, so that you'll have probably in this corner you will have slightly less than the 7.5 inch strip, so that will look good. So all I'm going to do now is stitch the long edge piece on the other side and then measure through and add the top and the bottom coloured strips. The mixed border is all on nicely. I just had to cut a little bit off on the corner pieces to make it fit, but as you see, it's really nicely done now, all the different colours. And all that remains to be done now is I'm going to cut sides first. I'm going to cut an 8 inch border. Again, this is the third border, 8 inches wide. I'll cut it long. This is the top, that's the bottom. So I'm going to cut it measure from the top to the bottom and cut a piece this size for both sides, left and right, and then I'll do exactly like I did before with the first border and do the bottom pieces. And then on top of that, when that's all on, we'll be cutting out the applique to go on the sides. You can't put the applique on the borders first because it doesn't turn out properly. You need to have the corners on really nicely to get the effect. So that's our next step, which we'll do after I have put on these 8 inch borders. Now the final border. I've stitched on the side borders because they're 8 inches, they're quite wide. I've stitched them on both sides, as you can see, and in the same way as I just said before, I'm going to measure now from the top and the bottom across, all the way across, cut 2 more pieces 8 inches wide and sew those on, and then I'll come back and we'll start on the applique. The reason I put the final borders on first before I attach the applique is because it's rather difficult to get these corner ones centered properly. It's much easier if you do it with the borders already on. So I'm going to show you next how to cut these out for those of you who don't do much applique. And this is, just as I said, this is the reason you have to have the border on first. For those of you who don't do much applique work, it's simple. You get applique fusible webbing. You will trace on the paper, you will trace the music note from the template, iron it onto your piece of fabric, and then using really sharp scissors, now I use these tiny little scissors, I will cut around the pattern all the way around, just using little snips to go all the way around. Keep it as close to the pattern as you can. I'll just snip that piece out there so I can get a piece better thing. So I will cut this out, then it will look, although it's purple, it will look like that. I've got music notes that look like this, and you can follow the picture on the pattern to arrange them all around. It's important that you do, when you're happy with how you've got them laid out, peel off the back of the paper and press them on with a nice warm iron, press them into place, and then you can applique them on using either a small zigzag or a whatever stitch you prefer to go round. There you might use a blanket stitch in place, and then it's pretty much your top is finished. So I'm going to finish cutting my last one out, then I'm going to iron them into place, and then I will stitch them on. With my applique all stitched on, that completes my quilt top. Now, if you have any trouble at all in making your pinwheels up, there's a handy hint I've done, handy hint number 20, and that shows you exactly how they go together. So if you need a refreshing of seeing these go together, that will show you. The other thing I'd like to just mention is, when you saw my first quilt in the opening shot of this video, those fabrics were the same pattern fabric but just in different colors, and that was because I was given a certain amount of fat quarters, all of the same pattern, just different shades. And you can choose that, or you can do your own from scrap. So the pattern contains everything you need to know, and you can follow the picture on the pattern for your applique pieces, how to position them. And then you've got a really nice cot quilt. So all you'll need to do is to put your batting underneath, your wadding, and then your backing fabric. And what I did was I stippled around the music notes, and I just stitched in the ditch around the pinwheels and around the first border. And that's really all you need to do for this lovely quilt. When you come to bind, you can either bind by joining scraps of your colours, or you can choose one colour that will match and go all the way around with your binding. So I hope that you have enjoyed this, and please come again and see another project the next time we put another project on. Remember to visit the Etsy shop for the pattern, and like and subscribe, because that really does keep us going. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.